Together with the Bureau of Economic Research, RMB just published the third quarter business confidence index. And while sentiment deteriorated, no surprise there, the index didn't fall by much in the bigger scheme of things, only down 7 points to 43. Give us your thoughts.
Well, it really does represent, what is going to be a bit of a difficult quarter for South Africa, but also shows us that, this is in response to a month of lockdown, which is, of level 4, which was during the first month of the quarter. Also the riots and unrest that we saw largely in KZN and the cyber attack on Transnet. That happened all in 1 month. We also then are in August, we've had August and we've got September. And so it shows us that there's been a bit of a temporary nature in the slowdown that was largely focused on July. And also when we look at it, we see that KZN saw a massive drop in confidence, while confidence in the Western Cape and Gauteng were actually relatively stable, suggesting that most of the confidence loss was actually in only one region of South Africa, and that, so we do see that there has been continued positive activity in other parts of the country.
Okay, so if it wasn't for the riots and the unrest, business confidence might actually have stabilized at about 50 index points in the third quarter, which would not have been a bad outcome, not at all. Okay, so let's take the conversation from the headline level to the detail. And if I go through the detail, particularly at a sector level, two sectors actually stand out for me in terms of the quarter-on-quarter move. The one is retail, and the other one is new vehicle dealers. I must admit I was a bit surprised when I look at the retail confidence, and the index actually went up in the third quarter, taking the index further into net positive terrain. So we are now well into 50. Take us through that.
Well, so retail sales have had a rather fortunate boost, and this is largely in the wake of this unrest that we saw. So we do know that government has increased its expenditure ceiling, and that has included terse coverage for those people who have been affected by the unrest. It includes the 350 Rand resumption of the COVID distress relief grant. And this is also once we've had the announcement of the government wage deal for this year, which we know is actually quite generous, well over 5%. So we know that retailers are looking at that and know that they've got probably some positive demand coming their way, even though they did have a slight kind of wobble during July.
Okay, so interesting countervailing factors to the sentiment depressing effect of the riots and the unrest. And I think those two factors that you've highlighted are actually quite important. Certainly something that lifted the mood amongst retailers. And I think perhaps one can add to that the vaccine rollout that seemingly is picking up a bit of momentum. Okay, from the good news to the bad news. And the bad news, the new vehicle dealers. Confidence dropped dramatically in the quarter, all the way down to, is it 47? So now we're in net negative terrain. On a quarter, that's a big move. Is it 16 points? That is substantial. What's going on there?
Well, we suspect that there was quite a big hit to your dealerships in KZN, so that is definitely one of the factors pulling this down. We also do think that there has been a slight moderation in your volumes of sales as a result of base effects from the second quarter.
Okay.
And so that's, that with that moderating, your confidence is also declining. But really what seems to be pushing this for new dealers is that they are really struggling to get supply. We know that inventories are particularly low, and this has been driven by very slow manufacturing, which is a result of supply chain disruptions that we're seeing globally. This includes the semiconductor shortage that is being spoken about quite a lot. But other parts are also struggling to be shipped across as ports are closed in response to further waves of COVID. Okay. So it's really difficult to get stock even when there is demand. which is keeping that down. And it's interesting because we do find, in contrast, and this is not measured in the business confidence overall index, but what is that used car dealers are actually seeing improved sentiment.
Okay, so there's an interesting story. So dealers of second-hand vehicles are seeing an improvement in volumes, and dealers of new vehicles are battling, and they can't get their hand on stock. So the car manufacturers are not delivering and producing as many cars as otherwise would be the case because of some of the supply issues and bottlenecks, as you explained. So if we take our cue from the respondents and their expectations about the future, would you agree that we can still say, despite a potentially bad third quarter, that the economic recovery is still intact and that we can still see positive growth in 2022, less so than this year, but a recovery that is still intact, taking us into the future? Happy with that?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Siobhan.